Hi everybody, it's Christy, the Virtual Health Learning Consultant. I wanted to put together a short video for you to talk about the skills required and the resources we currently have available at the moment, January 2021 at Fraser Health, to support you if you find yourself in the position where you are now teaching virtually online and specifically teaching patients virtually online via Zoom. So I'm going to share my screen and walk you through some resources, some concepts and ideas to really get you started in understanding where to start in this huge ask to transition your abilities as an educator over to working in the virtual space. So I'm going to share my screen with you here. And we'll start off on the Pulse and find some resources. So here we are looking at the Virtual Health Pulse landing page. So from here, I'm going to direct you to a page called Virtual Learning. So let's just search this, Virtual Learning. Space in between. And the first hit from that search would be Facilitating Virtual Learning. So that's the page we want to go to. I'm going to click on that. Definitely bookmark this page for yourself if you find yourself in this position where you now have this massive learning curve and you need as much help as you can get. So this page falls under the clinical support and services, clinical practice supports, and it's called Facilitating Virtual Learning. Myself and Gail Allison, who is an incredible resource on the professional practice team, are putting this page together for you as a list of resources and places to start. Good things to get you going. So let's look at some key resources on this page first. The first link is the PHSA Getting Started Toolkit. So this toolkit is called Facilitating Online Learning in Healthcare, a resource guide for leading and loving online learning in healthcare settings. This was put together in the very early stages of COVID-19, April, May, June, and we have asked permission from PHSA's new knowledge and innovation team to link you to this document, and they are okay with that. So I'm going to pull this toolkit up so you can have a look at what is in here. I think this is a beautifully put together resource for you. It's very visual. It's got a lot of graphics. It's clear, and the messaging is extremely gentle and self-compassionate in the transition over, in that you need to give yourself space to become a learner again and make mistakes and play in the learning environment to get this right. So they start out by giving some purpose, why this toolkit was created, a list of the wonderful people who created it, and a table of contents. So as we start here, we see they're giving you basics, process, planning, facilitation, some evaluation, follow-up, and terminology, and some other extensive resources and references. So please have a read through this resource. It's incredible. It will take you, maybe an hour to read if you're focused. Take bits and pieces of it away. It has some nice quotes on it. This one here, for example, even under ideal circumstances, facilitating online can be a challenge. So in the midst of a global pandemic, give yourself and others the grace and the space to not be perfect, to learn by making mistakes and trying things out, to be caring, compassionate, and patient, not only with those that you care for, but yourself as well. So please have a peek at this toolkit. It will give you ideas of, different types of learning styles. So like synchronous sessions where we're working together live, asynchronous examples of those, how you might use those different type of learning environments in caring for your patients and allowing them to improve their self-management skills. Maybe you're using motivational interviewing, things like that. So that's the first resource I'm going to direct you towards. There are 3 quick guides underneath that, one relating to engaging online ideas, tools and activities to get your learners to engage, and a planning checklist and tech trouble checklist. underneath those resources, there's 2 infographics that I have put together for you and placed online. The first one is 10 ways to create dynamic learning online. So this infographic walks you through 10 possible ways or techniques to use in your live Zoom sessions to get engagement from your participants or your patients, your learners. We're assuming here that you're in a teaching and learning relationship, so we'll call them your learners. So number 1, for example, is say my name. So making sure that you're greeting your learners by name as they enter that synchronous environment, encouraging them to change the way that their name shows up on their participant list to give you a first name, to make sure that you can engage with them during that session. This is where social presence begins, and we'll talk about social presence in a little bit. The next is icebreaker power, recognizing the strength and the power of a simple icebreaker to build connection and create community between your participants. As we scroll along, highly encourage you to get a checklist so that you don't forget anything during your session. Leverage all the features in Zoom that you can, or Teams if you're working in Teams. Like annotations, getting folks drawing on slides and drawing on photos and working together, sharing ideas, using your spotlight tool to pull their attention, and by circling with that spotlight tool to draw eyes and attention to a certain piece of content, using the polling feature to get some interaction. Definitely using your breakout rooms. When we use breakout rooms, those smaller groups of people feel more safe psychologically, and you're more likely to share and include your ideas and have a discussion, and maybe put your video up. If you're shy in the larger group, your patients might put their video up in those kind of smaller group environments. So breakout rooms have phenomenal power to support your engaging content. Reviewing muddiest points is number 7. So take a few minutes at the last tips of your live session to ask, what were the muddiest points for you today? What are you still really unsure about? And focus on those in the next class. Creativity is demonstrative of higher order thinking. So when you think of what your learners, how they're learning in your sessions, you want them to remember terms and words. You want them to understand. You want them to analyze things that you're giving them. This is Bloom's taxonomy, if you're familiar with Bloom's taxonomy. But at the very top tip of the pyramid of Bloom's taxonomy is creation. So one incredible way to make sure that your learners have a really deep understanding of a concept that you're giving them is allowing them the opportunity to create something. And often we do this in breakout rooms because it feels a bit more productive. We could use a collaboration tool. For example, you get everyone out and working on a shared document, maybe building a brand new brochure for other patients. But creation is a really great technique. Some of the best learning techniques that I've experienced when I do online courses are writing blog posts and doing podcasts. So those are great examples of creativity. Number 9 is creating connections, and I'll do a few slides for you after this on social presence. Social presence refers to the degree of realness that you create in your session. And if learners feel like they're there and present and learning with you, they're more likely to be motivated, engaged, satisfied with the learning experience, and this also builds community. So be your authentic, true self in all of your Zoom sessions, and including humor, and bring that piece of social presence in every time you teach. So a lot of these ideas really settle into the community of inquiry model, which I use in most of my online teaching. And this PDF has a clickable link for you to learn a little bit more about the community of inquiry model. It's all about framing your teaching and learning relationships. So the learners have a relationship in that learning environment to the content, to you as the instructor or facilitator, and to each other. And so if you picture a Venn diagram here, which is why I've got the Venn diagram, community of inquiry sits as a social or affective piece and a cognitive piece and a teaching space. And so we want to consider, how do the learners interact with me as the facilitator, How can they do that? What are their options? Live session or after the live session? And then how do the learners interact with each other? Create space for that and opportunities for that, especially when we're looking at creating peer connections during COVID-19. That's really vital, allowing everyone to still stay connected and feel like they have peer supports. And then how do those learners interact with their content? Is it before the live sessions? Do you give them videos and send them links and ask them to look at those resources first before they come into the live meeting to discuss those resources? That's called flipping the classroom. So definitely peek into the community of Inquiry Model. So that's my first infographic. The second infographic is found down here, 4 live class models for 1-hour synchronous sessions. So this is a very prescriptive infographic in that when you're just starting out in learning, sometimes you need someone to tell you exactly what to do. And in this infographic, we're telling you exactly what to do in a 60-minute learning session with your patients. So we've got, I'll zoom out a bit so you can see all 4. So here we go. It's 4 live class models for a 1-hour synchronous session. And there's 4 options placed here. My favorite tends to be number 1, the balanced interactive model. And here's your agenda. You spend 5 minutes on an icebreaker. You move into a mini lecture, delivering some content for about 10 minutes. You want to check for understanding, doing something interactive. That could be chat, that could be poll, that could be open discussion on the microphone. And then after that, move everyone out into a breakout room and maybe spend 10 to 15 minutes in that breakout room, giving them a clear understanding of what they're supposed to be doing in that breakout room, giving them some crisp discussions, and then have them come back, debrief how that went, debrief what they talked about. Sometimes it's best to have them decide who's going to be the recorder and who's going to be the presenter to the larger group. Some people are just too shy and they don't want to present all that information, so they'd rather, pass that off to another. And then save 5 minutes for questions at the end. So that balanced interactive is a nice model, but you could use the student-led seminar model. So that's more allowing students to come and present to you, and then having group discussions in between. Number 3 is the video interactive model, where you're playing bits and pieces, very short bits and pieces of a video, stopping, talking about it, reflecting on the topic, and creating discussion. Number 4 is content focused, where you're breaking up your content and making sure that every 10 minutes, at most 10 minutes, it's best to stop your content after 5 to 7 minutes and do something interactive to keep everyone engaged. None of this 30-minute lecture. You've lost them. They're not learning anything anymore. They're snoring. So these are 4 great models to get you started on how to teach via Zoom in that environment. Scrolling down, under tips for creating, that should say effective presentations, we've got 2 video links here for you out to the BC Patient Safety and Quality Council Quality Cafe webinars. There's 2 webinars. They're both an hour each, and one is about making data stick in healthcare and presenting that data via digital means, so across the video screen, so that it's going to stick in people's minds, presenting it visually, not giving you a massive amount of text on the screen and just droning on and reading that text. That's not how we learn. It's significantly more difficult for people to learn if you're talking and I'm reading text as a learner at the same time as you're talking. We never want to do that. So take a peek at these videos. The second one is Design for Communication in Healthcare. So that's specific to healthcare, things we want to think about when we design slides and use graphics. And how do we pull photos off the internet, making sure that we're not doing, infringing upon copyright. So those are great resources as well. So quickly wanting to talk about social presence. Let's take a peek here at some slides. So again, going back to what is social presence? It's really the degree of realness or salience of a person at the other end of a computer-mediated environment. Definitions really range when you look up social presence, depending on whether we're talking about a sense of being there or a sense of an interpersonal connection, all the way through to a sense of belonging to a group. So we need to think about here when we teach online, what strategies are we using in our activities to minimize transactional distance and help people feel involved, engaged, and real. If you're teaching virtually, you need to work significantly harder to create social connections. So when we teach online, we're actually acting as a host for that facilitated discussion. We want to ignite and maintain discussions continuously through the session. So use your slides as visuals in behind you, but note that you are the presentation when you're teaching online. You are the host. Let's talk about some benefits, potential benefits of building social presence in your live sessions. So there's potential when you're able to build improved social presence that you can increase learner motivation. You can increase learner engagement. You can build a sense of community. And the literature shows that you may also be able to increase learner satisfaction, which in turn increases learner persistence to stick with the sessions. We don't want to see patient attrition. And you may also be able to improve or increase learner performance in all their activities. Social presence supports collaboration, critical thinking, self-reflection. How does what my dietitian is teaching me in my diabetes session really allow me to think about my own context and reflect? And what are those activities supporting, and how are they supporting me to think about my context and self-reflect about what's going on in my life and how this applies to me? And we want to allow some co-construction of knowledge as well. So I really encourage you to stop thinking of your learners as consumers of information or content and start thinking of them as knowledge producers in the context of their life and their own health. They hold their future, so prepare them and support them in that. And that's a concept supported by Sean Michael Morris, and I have another quote in a later slide from him. His Twitter handle is @SlamTeacher. How do we build effective social presence? So let me give you some finite examples of how we can build social presence in our live sessions. So looking at this first column, the affective domain, here's some ideas captured. So we can express emotion in a meeting. If there's been a global event or a local event, we can connect on that emotional level to talk about that and how it's impacting us. We can use humor in our live sessions. You can use self-disclosure, talking a little bit about my life and what's going on with me. What I see when I look out the window is a bit of self-disclosure in describing my environment. I can express my values and beliefs, or I might use emojis and reactions in the meeting. Thumbs up is a really fun one. Applause is another, to build relationships. Cohesive elements of building social presence are included here in this next column. So greeting learners and addressing them by name is really key. Use inclusive terms like we or us. Share personal information if you're comfortable with that. And openly self-reflect. If someone brings something up, a patient introduces an idea or concept that you hadn't thought of before, just openly self-reflect. I really hadn't considered that. That's, not my lens. But I really appreciate you sharing that information with us. It's not a lens I had considered before. Thank you. And thanking them for that. Under the interactive domain, we have acknowledging the posts in the chat. So making sure that you go through and acknowledge all the posts in the chat. Use a co-facilitator if you can't manage 2 screens at once, and keep on top of that. Sometimes it's okay to create a co-host out of one of your participants too. Some people like to support and play that role. Certainly it's okay to agree or disagree with ideas or concepts in the meeting and create discussion and discourse. Express approval, invite questions, constantly invite questions, and offer advice. Sometimes it's nice to, in addition to this, do introductions, maybe share a photo that's important to you as a participant or as a facilitator. I want to strongly model these behaviors as a facilitator and show that this is expected of everyone if they're willing to come to the table and have those pieces of social presence built. Making sure that you're constantly reaffirming netiquette, the respect for others, turning off your audio when you're not talking so we don't have to listen to your background environment, turning off your video if you're doing something very distracting. Those are pieces of netiquette. And here I'm going to leave you with one quote from Sean Michael Morris. To really understand how to teach or work or learn online, we have to remember that every learner is human, and there are no humans existing in the digital space. This screen is not a venue, it's simply a tool. So you're creating community, you're creating a connected space that exists beyond this tool. This tool allows you to build presence, build community, build trust, and connect people despite being remotely disconnected from each other. So think about these concepts, and I look forward to how everyone continues to build social presence into their live sessions. I'm going to stop presenting and just make a note that I am available to consult if you require, if you're really struggling with moving your education online. It's Christy Boyce at fraserhealth.ca. If you have a general virtual health question, please reach out, virtualhealth@fraserhealth.ca. And if you have a technical question about Zoom or one of the other platforms that you're using for patient care, please email vc@fraserhealth.ca. So happy Zooming, everyone, and I hope you're doing well. Take care.